At first, no one took the rumbling engine seriously. It was London after all, a city where traffic sirens and scooters blended into the background noise. But something shifted one evening just after 7 p.m. in Hackney. A woman walking home from the grocery store had her handbag yanked by a blur on two wheels. She didn't see a face, just the glowing red taillight fading into traffic. 30 minutes later, another call came in, this time from Islington, then Brixton, then Camden. By the time night fully took hold of the city, a strange pattern emerged. Everywhere the streetlights flickered, mopeds appeared like ghosts. They came in small groups, always masked, always quick, and always brutal. In under 10 seconds, they'd target pedestrians' phones ripped from hands, purses slashed from shoulders, even groceries scattered in the middle of crosswalks as victims stood frozen. They never spoke. They never lingered. Behind it all was a man named Cane Vero. He never appeared in the heists. He never touched a handlebar. He orchestrated the operations from the rooftops using encrypted communication lines. With a military-grade drone hovering above the chaos, he watched in real time as his gang moved through London like liquid shadows. Cane wasn't a street thug. He was a tactician, cold, silent, detached. Each gang unit consisted of 3 riders. The first was the grabber, the one who took the phone or the bag. The second was the blocker, whose job was to slow down traffic or chase away nosy bystanders. The third was the spotter, often a teenage boy, who scanned the area for police, CCTV, or witnesses. If they didn't like the setup, they left. If they liked it, they struck with precision. Police were called to every incident. Sirens screamed across the city. But by the time they arrived, the mopeds had disappeared down alleys or into underground parking garages. CCTV footage, when available, showed blurred license plates or riders with mirrored visors. Most victims couldn't describe what happened. It all felt like a blink. Some said it was like being hunted. In one night, 23 incidents were reported across the city. Not one arrest was made. The Metropolitan Police issued a statement calling the attacks disturbing and promised to increase patrol presence. But internally, officers were frustrated. There was no pattern they could pin down. No one seemed to know who these people were, and worse, no one was willing to talk. Some residents whispered about a gang called the Vultures. Others referred to them as the Wraiths. But no one had proof either group existed. News outlets ran shaky footage of mopeds zigzagging through traffic, often followed by headlines about London's lawless streets. On social media, hashtags like Moped Terror and Fi London Under Siege trended overnight. Still, no real progress came from the outrage. DCI Fallon Rusk sat in her office watching the city descend into panic. She'd seen a lot in her career: organized crime rings, bank heists, and kidnappings. But this was different. These criminals didn't operate on turf wars or money laundering. They thrived on speed, surprise, and silence. It wasn't just about stealing. It was about control, about showing that the city could be theirs. Meanwhile, Cane Vero watched the chaos unfold from an abandoned building overlooking Shoreditch. He said nothing. He adjusted his headset, reviewed the route maps, and directed his crews to new neighborhoods with calm precision. He wasn't interested in cash or status. He wanted disruption. And so far, he was winning. In Croydon, a man tried to fight back when 2 riders tried to steal his phone. He ended up in the hospital with a fractured skull. The next day, his wife went public with her story on national television. But instead of deterring the gang, it emboldened them. That night, they hit 9 more neighborhoods. For the first time in decades, London felt paralyzed. Not by bombs, not by riots, but by machines. Small, silent machines ridden by faceless men. The police presence doubled, but so did the attacks. Streets that once buzzed with nightlife emptied by 9 p.m. People clutched their bags tighter. Parents rushed children indoors. And while the city braced for what came next, Cane Vero smiled from the shadows. He had tested the system, it failed. Now, he was ready to go bigger. Deep within the dim clutter of a converted storage unit in Stratford, nail cricks sat before a bank of monitors, each screen showing a different part of London. Traffic cams building CCTV, even hacked doorbell cameras. His fingers moved fast across the keyboard. eyes scanning code and data like a hawk hunting prey. At just 20 years old, Nail was the digital backbone of the operation. Where Kane Vero commanded the streets, Nail ruled the networks. He had no criminal record, no gang tattoos. He rarely even left the warehouse. But his reach extended into every camera, every wireless signal, every blind spot the city had. He knew where the police cars were before they did. He knew which areas were congested, where cameras had dead zones, and which networks were vulnerable. It took him 6 months to build a custom-coded surveillance override. He called it UFantanet, an interface that allowed him to delay live CCTV by 60 seconds across key boroughs. When someone reviewed the footage, they never saw the crime happen. The gang was already gone before the evidence even existed. On a cloudy Thursday afternoon, Nail detected an unusual spike in police radio traffic. A sting operation was being planned in Dalston. Officers hoped to bait the gang with a decoy using expensive items in plain view. Nail intercepted the plan in real time. He relayed the info to Kane, who instantly rerouted the group scheduled to hit Dalston that night. Instead, they moved to Clapham, where no extra patrols had been deployed. That night, 6 people were robbed within 30 minutes. The Dalston officers stood in the rain, waiting for ghosts. Nail's obsession with control wasn't about thrill. It was about power, something he had never tasted growing up in group homes, passed from one cold house to another. Tech became his escape, then his weapon. He didn't need fists. He had code. He built signal jammers that fit into cigarette packs, tools that blocked police radios within a 300-meter radius. They were hidden in bins, rooftops, and even under parked cars. Every time an officer tried to call backup during an attack, all they heard was static. Meanwhile, police departments across London grew more desperate. The numbers didn't lie. Robberies had doubled in 2 months. Confidence in law enforcement plummeted. The press demanded answers. Politicians pointed fingers. But no one could explain how criminals on mopeds were outmaneuvering one of the most advanced police forces in Europe. Behind the cows, Kane kept Nail on edge. He didn't praise him. He didn't comfort him. He only pushed for more. More coverage. More blinding tactics. More ways to paralyze the city without leaving a trace. And Nail delivered. He expanded PhantomNet's capabilities to reach into private building security systems. Even high-end apartment blocks became data sources. From one dimly lit room, he watched wealthy residents move through hallways, garages, and foyers, timing everything to avoid confrontation and ensure precision attacks. But Nail's skills weren't just used for robbery. Kane tasked him with deleting footprints. One night, a gang member dropped a burner phone after a job. Nail traced the IME, located the nearest CCTV, and manually edited out a frame that showed the member's license plate. It took him 4 hours and a bottle of pills, but it worked. The footage, when reviewed by detectives, simply skipped 5 seconds, just enough to erase a future arrest. DCI Fallon Russ began to suspect something more sinister than street crime. Her team noticed an eerie consistency in how ineffective the cameras had become. It wasn't bad luck, it was manipulation. She requested a digital forensics audit, but every trace came back clean. Whoever was behind the disruptions knew how to leave no fingerprints. Elsewhere in London, fear turned to speculation. Social media buzzed with conspiracy theories. Some claimed foreign hackers were aiding the gang. Others believed corrupt officers were tipping them off. But in truth, it was one young man in a hoodie surrounded by monitors and silence. Then came the breakthrough. Nail, careless after days without sleep, connected one of his personal devices to the network. The MAC address pinged a trace, small, almost missed, but it showed up in a larger data sweep Fallon's team was conducting. They didn't have a name, but they had a device. Still, Kane had planned for this. Every tech point used by Nail was disposable. Within hours, the Stratford unit was abandoned, equipment destroyed. Kane left behind a message on the wall, written in UV ink only seen under blue light. It read, you saw a shadow, not a man. And just like that, Nail vanished into the digital void again. But his fingerprints, his style, would echo in every street crime that followed. London remained a stage, and he was the unseen hand pulling the strings. Mira Dorn was not the kind of journalist who waited for stories to come to her. She chased them, even if it meant stepping into danger. For years, she had written about organized crime and systemic failure, always circling around the idea that power didn't just exist in politics. It moved in the shadows. The moment the Moped attacks began spreading across London, she felt it. This wasn't random violence. It was structure disguised as chaos. While media outlets ran with sensational headlines, Mira stayed quiet. She declined interviews. She didn't publish articles. Instead, she started watching. She cataloged the attacks, marked the routes, identified recurring locations. Her apartment wall turned into a map of pins, red string and timestamps. Patterns emerged, routes that circled certain ATMs, alleys consistently used as escape paths, and timing that suggested military-grade coordination. She knew what she was seeing wasn't coincidence. To get closer, Mira designed a trap. She dressed casually, carried a visible phone, and walked the same route in Shoreditch at night, where 4 previous robberies had occurred. She wore a hidden camera in her coat's zipper and carried a second device in her sock. On the 3rd night, it worked. A moped swerved toward her, and a masked rider reached for her phone. She pulled away just in time, but the close pass gave her a partial logo from the side of the moped. That logo, when enlarged and filtered through video software, revealed a graffiti tag known among London street gangs, R3Vs. It had been reported years ago in connection with a crew that vanished after a failed jewelry store heist. Mira remembered it clearly because 2 of the members had been gunned down by unknown assailants. Police never solved it. The survivors, it seemed, had resurfaced with new leadership and a new method: speed and silence. Still, Mira couldn't prove anything. Not yet. She began attending local court hearings involving petty moped-related charges, posing as a law student. She listened. She watched. One teenager slipped up during testimony, referencing the route captain and the timer, terms that meant little to the court but lit something up in Mira's mind. Whoever this captain was, he wasn't just giving directions. He was running a military-level operation. Her break came from an unexpected place. During her late-night walks, she noticed a white van parked 3 times outside different robbery scenes. It looked ordinary, no logos, no modifications, but something about its consistent presence nagged at her. She traced the van to a small storage facility in Walthamstow, where it was registered under a fake name. Posing as a local tenant looking to rent space, Mira managed to gain temporary access to the facility. She waited until the right moment and slipped into the van's unit when no one was watching. What she found confirmed everything. Inside were stacks of black helmets, gloves, burner phones, folded moped license plates, and several printed maps of central London. The maps were hand-marked with different colored pens. Red circles near jewelry stores, green near banks, blue near known CCTV blind spots. There were sticky notes with phrases like Opel 3 and Aros HDN PUS 8 2100. But most alarming of all was a folder containing printed schedules of upcoming public events, including a private gala for foreign dignitaries scheduled at the British Museum in 2 weeks. Mira took photos of everything and left. She didn't call the police. Not yet. Her trust in law enforcement had been eroded by years of cover-ups and half-truths. If she handed this over, it might disappear into a quiet file cabinet, never to be seen again. Instead, she drafted a report, attached all her findings, and encrypted it using a fail-safe app that would release the data if she didn't check in every 24 hours. She then began writing a feature story, her most important yet, not just about the Moped gang, but about the city's slow collapse under invisible control. She knew Kane Vero's name by then. She'd heard it whispered in alleyways and printed once in a vandalized notebook found near a crime scene. But she didn't know his face. She didn't know how deep his influence reached. What she did know was the gang was preparing for something massive, and the police weren't even aware they were being circled. Mira wasn't chasing headlines anymore. She was chasing a warning, and she feared the city wouldn't listen until it was too late. Rain had fallen all morning, washing the streets of London clean, or so it seemed. Beneath the surface, tension brewed. It had been 9 days since the last major attack, and many believed the nightmare was finally over. Businesses reopened late-night hours. Street patrols relaxed. People breathed easier. But those who watched closely, those like Mira Dorn and DCI Fallon Rusk, knew better. A calm this quiet wasn't peace. It was preparation. Across boroughs, strange things began to happen. CCTV systems flickered and went offline for scheduled maintenance. Police radios dropped signals at random. GPS devices in squad cars malfunctioned without explanation. Dispatchers chalked it up to software bugs. But Mira recognized the patterns instantly. This was Nail Crix's work. A dry run to make sure the city's eyes and ears were blind at the right moment. What no one realized was that Kane Vero's gang had shifted its goals. The robberies weren't just for profit anymore. They were distractions, training exercises. Kane had spent weeks planning an assault unlike any before. A synchronized strike across the heart of the city meant to do more than steal. He wanted to paralyze London, to show that he could hold it hostage with nothing more than mopes, smoke, and speed. On the night of the British Museum Gala, the streets buzzed with diplomatic vehicles and security teams. Important figures from around the world arrived under the bright glow of cameras and polished marble. Uniformed officers lined the perimeter, dressed in ceremonial gear. No one noticed the mopeds idling quietly several blocks away. There were 10 of them, positioned in pairs across key intersections, alleyways, and bridges. The riders wore matted black helmets, their engines silent. They waited for the signal. At precisely 9:45 p.m., Mira received an anonymous tip from an encrypted app she hadn't used in weeks. The message contained only 3 words, "It starts now." Within seconds, chaos erupted. In Mayfair, 2 mopes roared through traffic, tossing smoke grenades into boutique stores before smashing display windows. Alarms blared, drawing police attention. In South Bank, another group set fire to a parked squad car, then vanished into the underground. At Tower Bridge, a third pair crashed through a police barricade, tossing nails onto the road and disabling response vehicles. But the most dangerous strike happened near the museum itself, where 4 mopeds boxed in traffic, trapping vehicles full of dignitaries, while drones hovered overhead broadcasting the disruption in real time. The police scrambled, but their radios were jammed. Their routes were blocked. Officers trying to reroute ended up in traffic engineered to stop them. Piles of construction cones, parked vans, even false road signs. Kane had turned the city into a maze, and only his people had the map. Officer Jude Minton found himself alone near the scene, boxed in by flashing lights and debris. He had joined the force to protect the public, but as mopes circled his patrol car and civilians screamed nearby, all he could do was sit and watch. His call for backup didn't go through. His camera feed looped endlessly. No one was coming. Far above, Mira stood on a rooftop with her camera pointed downward. She live-streamed everything. Riders moving like insects across glassy roads, police immobilized, civilians running from smoke. Her feed gained tens of thousands of viewers in minutes, then hundreds of thousands. People began to realize this wasn't just another robbery. This was a coordinated siege. Elsewhere in the city, Torrin Maddox watched the feed. The ex-military strategist had been tracking the gang independently, frustrated by the police's inaction. He had mapped potential escape routes, predicted fallback positions, and prepared tools the force didn't have. Tonight, he moved. Torrin launched a drone of his own, tracking a cluster of mopeds fleeing east. He intercepted them in a narrow alleyway near Whitechapel. Using an electromagnetic pulse device, he disabled their engines in seconds. The riders were stunned. By the time they tried to run, Torrin had already alerted local patrol units. 3 arrests were made, and one of the gang members was identified as Silas Brigg, Kane's most aggressive lieutenant. Back at the museum, the chaos slowly waned. The gang had vanished again, but their message was clear. They could bring London to its knees in under 10 minutes, and there was nothing the police could do to stop them. In total, 38 crimes were committed across 5 boroughs in a single hour. No civilians died, but over 2 dozen were injured. Businesses were vandalized. Streets were burned. The police made only one meaningful arrest, and it wasn't because of their own systems. The public outcry was deafening. The mayor appeared on national television, vowing swift action. But Mira's footage told a different story, of failure and a city in denial. Somewhere in the darkness, Kane Vera watched it all unfold. He had lost a soldier, but gained something more valuable: confirmation that London was his chessboard. And the game had only just begun. The city didn't sleep for days after the coordinated attack. Streets once buzzing with nightlife became deserted after dusk. Businesses installed steel shutters. Schools canceled evening programs. London felt bruised. And the public didn't trust the police anymore. For the first time in modern history, the people began organizing their own safety patrols. Neighborhood watches armed themselves with radios, flashlights, and even makeshift barricades. Fear had done what bureaucracy couldn't. It made citizens act. The media erupted. News anchors repeated the same headline every hour. How did the police lose control of London? Pressure came from the top. The Prime Minister ordered a formal investigation. Scotland Yard was forced to admit that their systems had been compromised. But no names were released. No suspects named. No solutions offered. It became painfully clear that the people responsible weren't just riding faster than the law. They were thinking faster, too. Inside a secure holding facility, Silas Briggs sat in solitary confinement. He refused to speak. The gang's second-in-command, a man known for brutal efficiency, now stared silently at the wall. Detectives tried every tactic to get information from him, but Silas had prepared for capture. He had no phone, no known address. His fingerprints didn't match any on record. Kane Vero had made sure of that. He trained his crew not to fear arrest, but to embrace it as part of the strategy. Delay, mislead, and hold the police in place while the real operations continued. But something unexpected began to unravel Kane's control. It wasn't the government, it wasn't the police. It was Torrin Maddox. The retired Special Forces operative had spent years in isolation after leaving the military. But the sight of a city crumbling under street level tyranny sparked something inside him. He knew the structure of organized chaos. And Kane had exposed just enough of his blueprint for Torrin to see the seams. Torrin began hunting, quietly. He didn't wear a badge. He didn't ask for permission. He reviewed Myra's footage frame by frame, studying the gang's movements, their split-second decision-making, and most importantly, their escape patterns. He noticed a repeating cycle. Every large-scale attack ended near train yards, water treatment facilities, or construction sites, places with little security but lots of cover. One location kept reappearing, an abandoned industrial estate in Barking. It had been condemned for years, marked for demolition, but the paperwork had been delayed due to a funding error. Torrin visited it under the cover of darkness. What he found confirmed everything. Faint tire marks, discarded fast food, spray-painted symbols matching ones Mira had captured, and embedded in a pile of ash, a scorched drone propeller, identical to the models the gang had used. He returned the next night with a portable signal tracker. Deep inside one of the hollowed-out buildings, he picked up a faint encrypted signal. Dormant but still alive. Someone had been there recently. He didn't wait. He passed the coordinates to DCI Fallon Rusk with one message: send everything you have. You won't get another shot. A Fallon didn't hesitate. By dawn, a fall tactical unit surrounded the site. Inside, they found evidence of planning that stretched months, possibly years. Drones, disguises, pre-recorded police radio frequencies. But Kane was gone. No signs of struggle. No DNAs. One chilling detail etched in the metal wall using a blowtorch. Ooh, you lost the city because you never owned it. Ooh, the story exploded again. The Prime Minister issued another statement, this time less confident. The public had seen too much, and Mira's exposes dropped just hours after the raid. Her article, paired with never-before-seen footage, exposed the timeline of every major failure, from the ignored digital red flags to the political hesitations that let Kane grow in silence. She didn't just name the gang. She named the system that let it happen. Though the moped stopped appearing, rumors didn't. In Croydon, A woman claimed to see two masked riders scouting an ATM late at night. In Camden, a bike courier reported being followed by a silent engine that vanished once he turned into traffic. Each time, the fear returned. Kane hadn't been caught. His network hadn't collapsed. No official photograph of him existed. No confirmed age, background, or motive. He was an idea more than a man now, a symbol of everything the city had failed to see coming. But Kane had underestimated the ripple he created. Mira Dorn's footage became required training for urban response teams. Torrin Maddox was recruited as a tactical advisor. Officer Jude Minton transferred to cyber intelligence after completing a course funded by public donations. And DCI Fallon Rusk was promoted, but she never celebrated. In every briefing, she reminded her team of one thing: the quiet moments were when shadows moved. 2 weeks later, beneath a bridge in East London, a graffiti tag appeared. Not bold, not loud. Just 3 simple letters sprayed in red. R3V, the city wasn't healed, just waiting.